So that shiny new game just came out, the casting of Frank Stone, and you want to know if it's worth your time, right? Well, let's take a look at the game first and first impressions. Keep in mind this is not a full review, this is a quick look at the game. I played the game for about 3 hours, so I'll show some footage of the game while describing it and giving a few thoughts on it. First off, this game is pretty demanding. I had to use FSR and FrameGen at 1440p to play, and even then it wasn't quite the best experience, but it was good enough. I have a 3080 Ti. Also, after playing for 3 hours, this isn't really a video game, this is more like an interactive movie. I'd say that in those 3 hours, it had to have been at least 2 hours of just watching scenes. This game says from the world of Dead by Daylight, but I've never played the game, so I wouldn't know any similarities or Easter eggs this game may have. This game has 3 difficulties, but I'm not really sure where that comes into play, as in the time that I played, nothing was hard or even remotely hard. I played on the survival difficulty also, which is the middle difficulty. The game begins with a witch, or some mysterious lady named Augustine Liebe, talking about how she's been searching for a world that's close to ours, named the Entity, or maybe she means she's searching for something called the Entity in another realm. I don't know, but she says her key is someone named Frank Stone. You then first play as Sam Green, a cop, and he's at the Cedar Steel Mill. The year is 1963. He's searching for a missing boy and is asking the guard some questions. Every now and again during a scene, you can make a choice between a few options, and this keeps going on throughout the game as well. I believe your choices changes some outcomes, but I'm not certain on that. When you get to the parts where you can walk around, there's almost nothing to interact with unless it directly affects the mission, or if it's a collectible trinket that you can find. So far, the trinkets are the most common items that I've found, besides the mission stuff that you have to find sometimes. Every now and then, there may be a paper or newspaper article here and there, or maybe like a doll, but those aren't that common and don't really matter. So if you don't want to spend time looking around, you can just do the mission and you're not missing out on much. After Sam looks around the mill, he comes across Frank Stone, the person who took the boy. Sam ends up killing him, and then it shifts to the future and you're playing as Maddie. She has a letter addressed to her inviting her to a manor. Also, she meets 2 other people at the manor and they were also both invited. Eventually, after some scenes, some looking around, guess who then comes in? Augustine Liebe, the lady from the first scene. She wants something they all have, the last footage and evidence that was recorded involving an old movie named Murder Hill. Apparently, they all made some sort of deal, so they hand over the footage to her and then Augustine leaves and says that she'll be back. It then cuts to the past, 1980, so it's after Frank Stone died, but before 2024 where the people in the manor are. One of the 3 people in the manor who gave up their footage is named Linda, and she was one of the directors for the Murder Hill movie that they just gave up their secret footage from. It's Linda's past when she was younger and they were recording Murder Hill. There's Jaime, Chris, and Linda in the past. They're filming a scene and then Sam Green, the officer that killed Frank Stone, walks in. It's been like 17 years since then, so he's older and now the sheriff. He tells them that they can't be filming there and where they are is the old shut down steel mill where Frank Stone was shot and killed in the very beginning. So they leave for now and they're in the town doing some things, and then Chris is buying milk and sees Sam Green's son, Robert, work in the store. She invites him to sneak back into the steel mill with them while they finish up their recordings. He accepts and then helps him sneak back in as he knows his dad's patrol routes. At this point, it will then cut back to 2024 and you all get bored and start exploring the manor because Augustine is taking forever. After that, it'll again go back to 1980. This game likes to go back and forth between time periods. Chris, the other girl who's making the movie, then finds out about Frank Stone and researches a lot about him. She's excited about him and wants to finish their movie scenes in the steel mill at the location that he's been, because their film is a horror film, so it just adds to it. They then finish their scene at the mill, but then decide to do one more, and this time in a different location that Frank Stone had been in the building. Then Jaime's sister, Bonnie, followed them from home and sneaks up and scares him. They then let Bonnie tag along. After brother and sister Bonnie Jaime get into a fight later on, Linda invites Bonnie outside with her and asks her help with something. I haven't figured out what though, as the rest of the time that I was playing, those 2 weren't in any of the scenes. I'm sure I'll find out what happens with them in upcoming scenes. That then leaves Chris, Jaime, and Robert. Chris wants to look around more and find something of Frank Stone's to get a shot of, so they start looking around. As they look, they find an area that the police did not find in the past. Frank Stone was known for killing a lot of people and kidnapping that boy, but they also found even more bodies that the police didn't know of. Robert immediately leaves to go get his dad, the sheriff, and then Chris and Jaime also leave not long after. While Chris takes one last shot of someone's hand before they leave, a green explosion happens that knocks him over. Suddenly, a door opens with a green portal that just starts sucking in Chris, and then I made a decision as Robert to help her. Just as I did that, a skeleton ghost thing slices Robert right in half, like butter. Chris then gets sucked into the portal thing and the ghost skeleton disappears. Robert, of course, dies. He's in pieces. I'm assuming that the skeleton creature is Frank Stone brought back to life, but at this point I'm unsure. It then cuts back to 2024 in the manor and they're back to exploring again. I got got off at this point as it had been 3 hours already, and almost all that time I was leaned back and watching scenes. The good part with the skeleton only happened towards the end of my 3 hours. Also, I skipped over so much dialogue and scenes, as there's just so much. I only showed the main parts in this video. Also, I forgot to mention one thing about Maddie, the girl in the manor in 2024. Her mom was none other than Bonnie, the girl in the black leather who followed the group in 1980, Jaime's sister. She and Linda had gone out to talk, which I guess ended up saving their lives, seeing as what happened. This movie/game is interesting to follow along to, but boring to play, as you don't really do much. If you want an interesting story to follow along to though, then this game is for you. If that's not you, you'll want to skip this one. The story is interesting, but the gameplay is meh, which cancels each other out, I think, and leaves me a little mixed with the game overall. Also, the performance is rough, but the game does look pretty decent graphically. To leave on a positive note, I'll just say that I liked following along with the story. The mystery of the past and the present is enjoyable to watch and see what's going to happen, though that's my personal opinion. Whether or not this is your type of game, I'll see you on the next one.